Mustache Tales.
Yeah!
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Mustache Tales. Jay and I were talking before the show about who had the story, and I have it today. And it brought me back to the stories of when we were shooting the sequel to Super Troopers. So Jay will introduce our guest today, but as I was thinking about that time when we were shooting Super Troopers 2 in Massachusetts, one of the things that came to mind was the origin of the slow trash. Do you remember what a slow trash is, Jay?
I don't.
A slow trash is when you leave a room as if it's been totally trashed, but you don't go through the belligerent, drunken actions to trash the actual room, because we don't do that anymore. But if we wanted to leave a space and make it look like we had totally been irresponsible in it, we could arrange it to make it look like it was trashed. So this happened during the shooting of the sequel to Super Troopers when we were out in Waltham, Mass., which is a technology center outside of Boston. And we were all staying at the same hotel. And believe it or not, we all worked very hard on that movie. There were long hours. There were lots of different locations. There were lots of big kind of comedy gags that required a lot of setups. So part of the movie was shot during the day and the other part was shot during the night. So about halfway through production, sometimes when you're making movies, you go into these things called splits. So we had shot probably 10 or 12 days of day shooting on Super Troopers. And then halfway through, we moved to splits, which meant we shot till probably 6 o'clock at night. And then the next day, our call time wasn't till 5 o'clock that evening. So we had to sleep during the day. But being the trained specimens that we are, we had to be able to recalibrate our circadian rhythm and put ourselves on the actual time zone so we wouldn't get tired the next night. So we had to stay up all night after a shoot in order to sleep during the day so we could wake up at 3 p.m. the next day. So we were in the lobby of the Waltham Hotel, and we decided the best way to do it was stay up and drink and tell stories with everyone from the cast and the crew and the production. We were in the lobby. We were having drinks. The bar closed at about 11:30 p.m. The manager came up to us and he said, "Guys, I gotta shut it down. We've got a big technology conference that's staying in the hotel, and we've got to prep the building for tomorrow." We said, "Well, we can't do that. We're working here. We're going into splits. We've got to stay up." And he goes, "Well, maybe you guys can just take this up to the rooms." So the Broken Lizard guys and the cast, we all went up to one of these adjoining hotel rooms. We brought a couple cases of beer and a couple handles of Jack Daniels. We did what we do. We stayed up. We told stories. We were hanging out. And the same manager knocked on the door 2 hours later. And he said, "Guys, I'm so sorry. I got to interrupt this again. We got a big technology conference coming in the morning. You guys are waking up the guests around you on the floor." Well, we go, "What do we do? We're working. We got to stay up. I mean, we can't go to sleep now. It'll throw off the whole movie." He goes, "Well, I don't know if this is a good idea, but I could put you guys in one of the downstairs conference rooms." So we go, "That's great. I mean, that makes more sense. Just kind of sequester us in a downstairs conference room." So we get set up in this conference room downstairs. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning now. And we bring all our accoutrements and we're hanging out around a big conference table. There's a screen and everyone has a chair. It's a boardroom, essentially. And we kept carrying on doing what we do. Then at 8 o'clock in the morning, the manager comes into the room again, could not believe we were still in the room. He said, "Guys, this conference starts in this room in a half hour. You have to go to bed. You have to get out of here." And we looked around and we said, "All right, great. Yeah, no problem. It's fine. We'll go up to the room. We'll rack for 6 hours and go to work." But the room was not, we had been there for multiple hours, but it wasn't in bad shape. And I forget who it was. We all kind of looked around and we're like, "God, we're going to look like such a bunch of losers if we stayed up drinking in this room all night. And it doesn't look like we were partying." So we decided to slow trash the room, which was we choreographed what it would look like if a rock and roll band had been partying in the room with Jack Daniels and beer all night. So we started taking the chairs and putting them on the table, and then taking another chair and leaning it against the other chair to make it look like they were thrown. Then we would take beer and kind of pour it on the table to make it look like it had spilled. And we created this pyramid. We stacked all the chairs on top of each other. We looked it over. We made adjustments. And then we all left this conference room. And as we left the conference room, there were tons of executives in ties and skirts with their bagels and their coffee going into the room. And we said, okay, guys, it's all yours. You can have the room. We slowly did it. It was beautiful.
What you left out was, we were kicked out of one room and we went to another room. We were kicked out of that room, went to another room. Then we went down there. My approach when hotel staff come in and tell us to quiet down is I'm like the nicest, most polite guy in the fucking country. I'm like, absolutely no problem. Oh, of course, we'll whisper all this stuff. You take the opposite approach. You're rambunctious. You're like, what? Are you kidding me? All right, we'll be quieter. And I'm like, what? And then, okay, you're like, fine, we'll move to the goddamn other room. Now we're in a caravan, and it's 1 a.m, and you're cranking hip hop on your speaker, which you refuse to turn down, from room to elevator down, now another floor. And each time we moved, you're playing this fucking thing. I'm like, oh, God. And then all the way down to the conference room, you fucking blasted your hip hop. And you were
it was a Pied Piper.
You were pretty new into the movie at the time. And I was still trying to tell Broken Lizard, like, no, this guy's cool. And Heffernan was like, I don't know, man. You sure about this dude? I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not sure about this dude at all. Oh, well. Anyway, so our guest today is Joe Collins. He's the director of photography on Super Troopers 2. You've done 3 films with me. So the next one you did is Easter Sunday with Joe Coy. And then you shot
Correct.
The latest Broken Lizard movie, which is called Quasi, with Kevin Heffernan directing. But we met on Royal Pains, which is the show about a concierge doctor in the Hamptons who, basically takes care of rich people, and to balance it out, to make him a good guy, he takes care of the fishermen and the plumbers too. He's a good guy, so it was a classic boondoggle. I thought, like, we got to go out to the Hamptons, for some part of every shoot. We only shot in the summertime. I did like 11 of them. I'm not even sure. And we go out to like East Hampton and fucking we just, we were on a boat. Joe and I were on a boat for 3 days, like, hanging out with like off
floating around Montauk.
Yep. And, and it was just a magical, it was on the USA Network. And that's ultimately where we met, and it kind of blossomed into a friendship. And, there was a little bit of drinking and hanging around, and eventually, I don't know, you ended up shooting Super Troopers 2, which was, it was fantastic. I mean, you brought all that crew from that you worked with in New York for all these many years. And,
right.
And I just, let me ask you a second, Joe, do you see yourself cut off in the frame?
No.
Oh, okay.
Do I need to center myself
maybe,
more?
Yeah. This is a classic example of Joe and I working on the set. I'm like, is your plan to cut the actor's face in half like that? Or are you, if it's a stylistic thing, we'll shoot a second take and try it another way. But yeah.
You said we could be artistic.
But you were part of a New York scene, like starting like 80s, right? Like, or
89, 90. Yeah. I got in the union in 1990 in New York. So yeah, it started then, working my way up from the bottom. I started in a rental house and then got in the union, was a trainee, a second assistant, a first assistant, an operator, second unit DP, then a DP, and now a DP director.
So you must have been around New York when the grip truck was where the cocaine was done.
I was in New York when the dark room was the cocaine room in New York. There were literally times where I had to wait to turn around magazines as a loader because I had 3 prop people in the dark room with the door shut. We shot with film back then, so you had the film cans. One film can in the dark room was always dedicated to whatever crew member needed to come in and do a whiff. And so you could hear the clack, 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 and you'd be like, okay, how long, guys? How long, guys? Just a minute. And then, then there'd be another grip, and then you'd have to negotiate with the grip to get in there, to get your mag done, and then get out. But that's just the way it was. Yeah.
Don't open the door. You'll expose the film.
Yeah.
But there were also very few, I say very few, there were no limits on how long people really worked. Right, it was just sort of, there wasn't this mandatory 11-hour day, or
That when I first started, they were pretty strict guidelines for features and television. But New York wasn't that major a hub, really. It was we called it the city that gets them to the doorknob, because you'd shoot all the exteriors, and as soon as someone opened a door, you were in Toronto, you were in Vancouver, you were back in Hollywood. So one of the reasons for that was it was so punitive for you to shoot late, for you to shoot on weekends, for you to incur meal penalties, for you to shoot overnights. So in 1990, the studios there were 3 unions in the country for camera. There was the East Coast, the Central, and the West. And the contracts were all staggered. So that way the studios could pit 2 sections of the country against the one they were negotiating with. So they'd rotate the work around based on what area they were negotiating with. And so New York was frozen out for a while there, and then gave a bunch of concessions in order to get work back. And so things changed after that. But you would, if for working on like music videos or commercials, nobody gave a shit. You could work 23, 24 hours, and that was it. Second meal, third meal, pizza. That was it.
And much like when actors or performers start out, it's like you go to New York or LA. Joe, you started in New York. The scene was there. The independent film scene was booming during that time, where you could get a lot of good stuff was coming there, and then it would go to festivals and then sell. Did you ever say, I'm going to go out to the land of fruits and nuts and start trying to be a DP out there and shoot, or was it all just that was your scene in New York?
Well, I had gone to college in Arizona. I went to Arizona State, the Harvard of the West, and I had spent 7 years getting a 4-year degree there. And I had signed up for a camera course. I was always planned to go to Los Angeles. That was always my goal, to graduate. I had got a degree in directing television, go to LA, start working. There was a guy from New York coming out to open up General Camera West, which became Panavision Hollywood. But because the building wasn't ready yet, he had to stop and hold over for like a month in Phoenix. So he decided, well, what can I do with this equipment? I can make some money off it. I'll have a seminar. So he did a month-long seminar every Saturday and Sunday, training you on camera equipment. People who were interested in the film business, you paid a fee, and you got the month-long thing. His name was Charlie Gambino, and he was, because he was from New York, I was the only other guy from New York. We hit it off, and he said, look, man, if you're ever back in New York, look these guys up. It's a company called General Camera. They represent Panavision in the East Coast. You tell them Charlie Gambino sent you, and the door will be wide open for you. I was like, okay. And I filed that away. So in the meantime, I was like, playing golf and beach volleyball. I was managing a bar, and I wasn't really actively pursuing future employment. So my dad got sick the following summer, so I came home to kind of be with him. He recovered fine. Everything was all right. But I wasn't due to return to Arizona for, 5-6 months because I had an open-ended ticket. So I walked into General Camera and I said, hey, I know Charlie Gambino. He said, come by and say hello. And they're, Charlie. Oh, come on upstairs. And that's how I got my foot in the door, because it was very hard in those days. You had to be family or you had to be someone in the business to get your foot in the door to get into the union. And the camera rental houses were the only way to do that because you had to meet everybody. You had to pass an oral exam. You had to pass a hands-on test. And then you had to go and get work independently on your own. And the most feasible way to do that was either to be connected or to be able, have worked at a rental house. And so they offered me a job. I said yes. And then for 2 years, I worked, prepping camera orders and learning the gear and meeting the people, and then got in the union as a result. And then I stayed in New York.
But because that's the barrier of entry, right? When you go up for a job, you have to be able to get the equipment to execute the job in the way you want to do it. So you need those relationships with the places that have all the equipment in order to be like worthy. Otherwise, you're just the production doesn't bring you the cameras and everything. Part of what you're doing is bringing all that to the world.
Yes, and having a good relationship with these places goes miles. You get into budget crunches, so you're up against something. You need a camera. You're shooting late night, and something's broken. These are the guys who will go the extra yard for you because you have that relationship. So it's a good thing to have, and it also helps you in negotiations with producers and budgets. You're able to you're in a better place to make a deal that works out for everybody.
Can I took a film class at NYU and they taught us 3-point lighting. Do you think of that when do you light everything still in a 3-point way? And can you explain 3-point lighting?
Well, my understanding of 3-point lighting, not having graduated from such an esteemed program as NYU, would be
I took a class. I took one class. Anybody could get in. I'll explain to you. Can I explain to you what I think? He wanted to get it in there.
That
sure.
A front light that generally kind of lights.
Let me stop you right there. No.
Side front, and then a side light that kind of suggests where the light source is coming from. Maybe the window, and then a little bit of backlight to kind of put a little kind of glow on you. That's how I was taught.
In essence, that is correct. You have what's called a key light, which is your most powerful source, which is the dominant light. You have a fill light, which illuminates the opposite side of the key light, which kind of brightens the exposure on the darker side. And then you have a backlight, which kind of differentiates you from the background, gives you an edge. That's the very basic concept of 3-point lighting. Yes.
So why does it take you so long to light a scene?
Because these fuckers move around, and they're worried about the bags under their eyes.
Even staying up in a conference room drinking all night. That's the drama. It's not the lighting.
You are. You also were around for the transition from film to these high def cameras. So, I'm experiencing that with you. But you're a very quick lighter of sets. We spend most of our time on set shooting, and to my view, the right amount of time to light. And obviously, you benefit a great deal from being able to use. Some of these cameras, we don't have all of this lighting in the room and all of the seat. And on the movie Easter Sunday, we built the set, so you were able to put lights in all sorts of different places and put them on a board, which is also enormously helpful. But yeah,
a board meaning what? You could program them. They were stationary.
A mixing board, like you'd have in a sound recording studio. Only it's a mixing board for light. Basically, and you can control every light and you control every intensity. And these days, you can control the color in each light with the new systems and technology that's out there. It's pretty extraordinary.
Was there a frustration, to Jay's question, when you move from film to digital? Remember that liminal phase where stuff just looked so awful for so long? There was no depth of field. Two people everybody would be in focus. If one person was 20 yards in back of someone, it looked very flat. I would imagine it's almost like when doctors would learn to do surgery one way, like at some type of transplant, and then all of a sudden the machines came in, and now the same doctors who used to get in there and have to cut it up, or like a DP exposing the film and worrying about exposure times and lighting. Now we're working with remote controls. I mean, it's like the whole game changed.
It was a big game change. We went from film, which is where you're with a light meter and you're working with that light meter, and you're working with chemistry, you're working with a lab, and then you're working with transferring to tape, and that whole language and methodology. Then we went to actually recording on a digital tape recording decks on the cameras, and it was during that transition from the decks to the actual chip recording cameras, the new digital cameras that are kind of the standard today. It was in that transition where things were like, I don't, this, it looks good, but it doesn't look as good. So everyone was trying to figure out a way to fuzz up the lenses, to make things less harsh, less crisp in this unflattering way, and things, because we're all used to how film looks for 100 years of watching film. So that was a struggle. I honestly found the transition from going from film to digital easy. I actually kind of liked it because with the right monitors, you're looking immediately at what you have, and also in terms of focus. There's no question. I mean, as a focus puller, you'd go home at night. I remember going home at night and praying the next day that the lab report said, "Yeah, all good," so I didn't have to worry about getting fired. And now immediately, when you have it, when you don't, and when the exposure is there, and when the color is there that you want. And I found that freeing, liberating, and I think it for me, it's one of the aspects of it that makes me and the crew able to work more quickly and be more united, I guess, in terms of what we're going for visually.
Well, just to frame that for a listener who doesn't know the old way you were talking about, a focus puller, I mean, you had objects and people moving in a shot, and the focus was being adjusted in real time. So the camera would be pointed at them, and then somebody else's job would be putting that image in focus as it was happening. So if someone overstepped a mark or came too close or came too far away from the camera, the whole shot would be distorted. And then when you think about it, if you're close up, it'd be like centimeters could distort a whole shot. So you never knew what you had. That must have been a terror.
It was brutal. I couldn't wait to start operating as an assistant. It was you spent your whole day guessing. You have a tape measure, you throw some marks on the ground, and then you just fucking hope. Right.
Right.
That's it. And
you're not you weren't even looking at a screen when you were a focus puller. You didn't have a monitor in front of you, something that you were focused on. You were looking with your eye, and then
you've got your hand on the camera, and you're not seeing what the lens is doing. You're just kind of gauged. You over time, you've learned where the position of your hand that rotates the gear on the lens that tells you how far the focus is, and you're watching the actor hit marks, and you're hoping that where your hand is here matches here, which matches that.
So the DP,
and sometimes it doesn't.
And so the camera person would tell you, it got a little buzzy on that last.
Yeah, you missed him here. You missed him crossing from the table to the chair.
Right.
Okay, you take your tape measure out, remeasure it, and go again.
Right.
Yeah, and think of the stakes too. You've got maybe a moment that happened, which was brilliant between two actors. Maybe somebody had to get emotional, which is hard to recreate. And if you fuck it up as the focus puller and you don't have a camera in front of you, that's on you, dude. I mean,
there's no escape. It sucked.
You as a director, you learn to be very just sort of like, we could talk about it, we could argue about it, we could blame people, but the fact remains we have to reshoot this shot. And I would always, once you realize, the focus puller doesn't really talk to the director unless they have this to tell them, like they go, I think you should do another one. And you're like, got it. And in order to keep the crew on your side, the director can't walk up to the actor and say, that guy fucked up. You got to go to the actor and go like, I loved it. I fucking loved it. But I wouldn't mind doing it one more time. Just if you could shade in, and you're like making up some nonsense, and then
Right.
the crew is like, we like this guy. But it's it's like, or if you have to, sometimes an older actor would be like, what was wrong with it? I'm like, technical difficulties. You can't blame the person because it's just not. It's such a difficult job, and there's a lot of magic to it. It looks like because they're just like, and they want so desperately to get it into focus. They're always the crew member with the tucked in shirt. That crew member always has a tucked in shirt, and they've got a belt, and they're organized, and you're like, that guy's fucking trying very hard to keep that in focus. So I whenever someone says, I'm like, yeah, we're going again. That's it. There's no fucking conversation about it. Let's move on.
So what allowed the jump to happen then? My understanding was it Michael Mann was somebody who kind of was a trailblazer in digital film, where he said, I'm going to make it look as cool as it did when I shot films. I think the first big one he did maybe was Miami Vice or something, where he said, I'm going to get depth of field. I'm going to make it work.
It was Tom Cruise, Jamie Foxx movie that was shot by two different DPs. Paul Cameron was one, and there was another one, but a lot of that was shot on digital. And I think that was the first big push into digital. I wish I could remember the name of it. Tom Cruise plays like a hitman who Jamie Foxx is a taxi driver and picks him up, and then his night goes to hell because Tom Cruise is taking him on this wild fucking ride. But that was shot with a bunch of digital, and that was one of the first big digital shoots, as I remember. Yeah. And you also had the Dogma movement out of Scandinavia, Dogma 95. Those guys were shooting on high 8, and they were just letting it rip. It was like as bare bones and ballsy as possible.
Using lamps in their houses to light the scene. Like there was no extra light allowed.
Exactly.
You had to just whatever light.
Yeah, exactly. No, there were like there's 6 rules for a Dogma movie, right? It's like one location. It has to be taking place in real time. No cuts. It was, and that was
crazy.
That came out of the digital.
That film we shot, Hayes, Baby Makers. The entire movie was shot on 35, and then the reshoot was shot on digital because we had some low light night shoots, and we made the decision to kind of minimize the lighting on it, and whatever. It turned out fine.
Right.
But it was.
Would I be wrong to say that the technology shifting from film to digital was the biggest budget decreaser in making a movie, because it was so expensive to shoot on film? But I think that some of the reasons why that it had a ripple effect on stuff, because it brought the budget down significantly technically. And that's what kind of allowed people to start squeezing wages across the board on production. That's what I felt like over the last 15 years.
I haven't experienced that. I've experienced lots of squeezes in other ways, but nothing that I could directly relate to that. Not saying that that's not true or accurate in other avenues of production. One thing I can tell you is that the switch to digital, originally everybody thought, we're going to save on lighting, we're going to save on film, we're going to save on processing, we're going to save on the labs, we're going to save on all this bullshit, we're going to save on reshoots, we're going to save on all this stuff. Well, it turns out that the camera crew now is like the biggest department on set. You used to have like three folks. Now you've got 2 operators, one of them Steadicams, you've got 2 first assistants, 2 second assistants, 2 loaders, you've got a digital imaging technician, you've got a utility cable person, and you've got the DP. And it used to be that you'd have like 8, 9 grips, 8, 9 electricians, 3 camera kids. Now that's completely changed. Also, with the resolutions that we're shooting, post-production facilities, editing, all this sort of stuff, all that, we're shooting at higher resolutions, and they're charging more to store the higher resolution, the higher amount of information. And that's another way that they're balancing it out so that they're not losing,
Yeah.
It started out that way, but It's not so much anymore.
It used to be like, I don't remember the amount of money, but it was like, you talk to your producer and they're like, we're paying 47 cents a foot for a film. And you're like, the money just kind of, so we would cut after every single take. We would, if we're talking, we'd cut so that we're not wasting 47 cents a foot. And the big change in digital is that now, it's like, okay, if we cut, all the makeup people are going to come in, the lighting people are going to come in, and then it's going to cost us 15 minutes just to try to re-roll again. So a lot of directors are now like not cutting. And they're walking in there, they're talking, and they're like, all right, let's go again. But that creates this massive amount of digital bullshit at the end where they have to save all of this shit in between while the director's just talking to, the actor, and that you pay for that. So,
Yeah, it's true.
We managed a way not to let them cut our budgets. Hayes, I guess they cut your salary a little. I know you don't like that so much.
Across the board. Should see the craft service now, all the way down through there. Carrot sticks.
Joe, I want to go through a couple of these movies you worked on.
Sure.
Can you tell me about the Pelican Brief?
Pelican Brief was shot between New Orleans and Washington, D.C., and I think a little bit in Richmond.
This was a John Grisham movie, right?
It was a John Grisham book. It was directed by Alan Pakula.
McConaughey?
And I don't remember him being in it. It was
to Kill.
It was Denzel Washington, Julia Roberts, Sam Shepard, Stanley Tucci, and a bunch of other folks. Shooting in New Orleans for 2 months in like July and August was brutal. We were shooting almost all nights too, so it was hot. It was sweaty. You just smelled stale, rotten beer and gutter water all the time. But it was a blast to be there. Our first day on set, the chief of police visited us to greet us and welcome us to New Orleans, and everybody's gathered around for this serious speech, and producers introduce him, and he introduces himself to the crew and says, I'm so-and-so, I'm chief of police down here in New Orleans. I can't tell you how excited we are to have you and the stars and everybody here. We're looking forward to you having a great time. Our streets are open. Our city is open to you. We want you to have the best time you possibly can down here. And we just want you to know that as long as you're here working with this film crew, none of you is going to get into any trouble, no matter what you do. Unless you kill somebody. And if you do, production has my number. You call me first. You make sure you call me first. You kill somebody. And he was dead fucking serious. We were like, oh my God, where are we? This is day one. We already got an out if we murder. Bonkers.
That's I've never heard that story from you. And I have an almost identical story. When I was shooting the Dukes of Hazzard, we were shooting down in New Orleans, and we were shooting a scene where the generally jumps onto the 10 freeway into the middle of traffic. And so we shut it down for miles. And chief of police came up to me, and he goes, son, you getting any trouble down here at all? You give me a call. And he gives me his card. He goes, anything short of murder. And then he goes, actually, for you, murder's okay too. And same thing, same fucking thing.
Perfect.
I was like, that's awesome. That's amazing. That's really funny. I also have never asked you about Glenn Ross. I mean, what were you were on crew on that film? You were on camera?
Yeah, I was a camera trainee on Glenn Ross. And this is, film. So there was a DP operator, first assistant, second assistant, and me, the trainee, but I was also working as the loading the film. That was an extraordinary experience to be in that room, to watch those actors, to listen to that dialogue, we would go to lunch and we'd be quoting lines that we had shot in the morning at lunch to each other because they were so fucking good. And it was, I mean, to this day, I remember it vividly as one of like the great experiences of my film career. Jack Lemmon was an absolute beauty of a human being. Always, as soon as he'd be rolling just before action, he'd be sitting there twiddling his fingers, and he'd go, "Magic time, action," and then he would go and he'd be writing character. He had them bring in a piano, and we were shooting Count Astoria stages in Astoria. And he had production bring in a piano for him so that in between setups or in between scenes, he could just go down there and play the piano and sing songs. And it became such a thing that, the producers actually started getting worried because, we'd be doing lighting setups and there'd be 20 people down there hanging out with Jack Lemmon while he tickled the ivories underneath the set and no fucking work is getting done. What he ended up doing was he put a big snifter on the piano and he would take, he would take tips to play songs. And at the end, they donated it to a charity that the crew voted on, where this money should go. But he was fantastic. Alec Baldwin was on set for like 2 days, blew the doors off the place, scared the shit out of everybody in the room. Like we were all just like, oh my God, who is this fucking guy?
My understanding of his scenes in that movie, those scenes, the ABC Always Be closing monologue, which is one of the great monologues that Mamet wrote, but it wasn't in the play. He wrote it because Alec wanted to be involved in the movie. He had only a couple of days to do it. So Mamet wrote that for him to come in and give that seminar to the sales team and do it. And it's, I don't think it's
extraordinary. I mean, you still remember it now, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Did you ever hear what Mamet said about Super Troopers 2?
No, I don't think I was on that text chain.
He was quoted before the movie was coming out. He goes, "I can't believe they're making another Super Troopers." He goes, "I can't imagine what it's going to be because the first movie was simply perfection."
Wow.
I know.
From David Mamet. Holy shit.
I know.
That should be on your wall, Jay.
I know. That's right. I mean, that Alec Baldwin thing is incredible. It's, to me, the greatest. I mean, obviously, I'm not the only one, but it's the greatest monologue I've ever seen. I mean, it's incredible.
It's
and
incredible.
The other guys who were in the room, you're like, I mean, Spacey and Jack Lemmon, and I mean that whole thing. You're just like, wow. Oh, Ed Harris, right?
Yep.
So cool.
Ed was great. Ed played on. We had a softball team. Ed was on the softball team. Matter of fact, this might be a story I can't tell. The director James Foley was a little nuts, but great guy. He took a liking to me, and his sister was a PA on the show, and we were seeing each other kind of during the run of the show at the wrap party. And I was scheduled to fly up to Boston the next day after we wrapped to go to a movie called House Sitter with Steve Martin and Goldie Hawn. So we're at the wrap party, and then I get invited to go back to the director's apartment for an after party. And I'm like, this is like my second movie. I'm just like, oh, holy shit. Fuck yeah, I'm going. I'm on my way to Hollywood, man. This is awesome. So we go back to his apartment, and it's Jamie Foley, it's Ed Harris, it's Jamie's sister, it's myself, and then some other person who I didn't know. Next thing you know, 8-ball of cocaine comes out on the table. And that was it. I think I made it home at like 9 a.m. the next day. I missed my flight. I was like fucking gone. But I didn't care. I was like one of those moments where it's like, I don't care what happens to me. I'm sitting here doing blow with Ed Harris. Nothing matters anymore.
And the camera loader from the back of the truck that was on the street.
I'm fucking nobody.
Speaking of blow, right? Can you tell us about your time on Carlito's Way with Sean Penn? Now, Carlito's Way, just to recap, it was a great like Long Island crime movie, if I have that correct, or New York City crime movie. Sean Penn,
New York City,
shaved male pattern baldness into his hair and kind of created sort of a Jewish afro kind of look.
Correct.
Glasses. And I go into such detail because Steve Lemmy in Beer Fest
looked like him.
Copied that look. He shaved male pattern baldness, went glasses, put on a Jewish afro. And Steve Lemmy was like the victim of a little bit of like anti-Semitic action in the hotels in New Mexico. He said he would get some comments from some of the good old boys for being like Jewish, and he's like, I mean, yeah, okay. Like he didn't, he just kind of stayed in character. But I know Sean Penn in Carlito's Way, wasn't he sort of a little bit method during that movie?
He was quite a bit method. He was all in on the method. It was he played Al Pacino's lawyer. Al Pacino's a guy who's been arrested. He was a gang guy. He's come out. He's trying to go straight. He's trying to open up his own club. But the forces of his previous life keep encroaching. And there were a few crazy scenes. Sean had an assistant named Doc who had some bag that was full of stuff that would show up upon request. Doc, come over. Things would rattle around. Stuff would come out. We all kind of pretended not to pay attention. But there were scenes where he was supposed to be drinking and doing blow, and our prop master, a woman named Barbara Kastner, a classic old school New York prop lady, came over. We're shooting a scene in, I forget what, it's an apartment or a hospital room or something. And Sean's drinking a whiskey with one and he's snorting with the other. And she goes, hey, boys, watch what happens when I give him his Coke. I go, okay. So she walks over, she hands him the prop Coke, takes it in his right hand, puts it in his right pocket, goes in his left pocket, pulls out his own Coke, and proceeds to do the scene with his own Coke. And we're all just like, I mean, we're assuming. Who knows? I don't want to label.
He brought his own props.
It was pretty bonkers.
Are you done with that story yet?
No, yeah. Same thing with the booze. It would be kind of, he'd get his, he'd pour his own. That would be that, and off to the races.
Say his own booze.
It was professional of him not to ask the prop department to furnish him with that. Right?
Yeah.
He could go through the motion.
Yeah.
But he would walk on set. He would be in that zone. You would just be like, okay.
I mean, what an incredible actor, and obviously, this is not the first time people have heard that Sean Penn has probably done coke, but I'll tell you the second time they've heard it. So when I was making Dukes of Hazzard in Knoxville, and I went out every single night, and it was like 4.5 months. Like we just were like just glued together at bars, and. Occasionally, he would get a call from some kind of, starlet or female. Like he was like Mick Jagger at the time. But anyway, he's like, let's go down to New Orleans. We were in Baton Rouge on a Sunday night. Let's go have a drink with Sean Penn. He's in town shooting something, and everybody was a Jackass fan. I think Sean Penn was in one of the Jackasses.
Cool.
And so we get to this, some random fucking bar in the French Quarter, and the three of us are sitting around like a tall, high top, and I meet him, and we're kind of bullshitting, whatever, and we're smoking cigarettes. And Knoxville gets a call from, at the time, somebody, I won't say who it was, but you would have wanted to get that call. And so he, at midnight, we got there about 11. He leaves to go to this hotel room, wherever he's going to go, and leaves me with Sean Penn. And I'm like, that's fucking cool. And so it's probably 20 people in the bar, me and Sean Penn, whatever, and whatever. And he's like, hey, you want a little something? And he just starts cutting lines onto the table. And I can't guarantee it was cocaine. I mean, it smelled like it. But and when he and I sat there smoking butts and drinking and doing that stuff for, I mean, 4 hours. I mean, we were there till 4 in the fucking morning. And Knoxville never came back. And I had a car outside waiting for me. Like, I guess that's it. And I never saw him again. But We had a good time.
This is my best friend in the world.
I mean, like
we're going to hang out all the time. We're getting along so great right now.
It's funny. He's such a famous person that in my insecure mind, I'm like, I spent 4 hours with the guy. We did all that. We had a great time. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't even know if he has any clue who I am. Like now, I don't even know if he would even remember. But I mean, who knows? But although Pat Heffernan, Kevin Heffernan's brother, was his key grip on a couple of movies. So I was always hoping to meet him and ask him. But I never.
Yeah.
What else is there? Devil's Advocate. I want to hear about that.
Devil's Advocate there's a few stories. So that was a classic. I remember, first off, when we started the movie, they didn't know who to cast opposite Keanu Reeves. So we had a casting call, a screen test, with an insane list of actresses. And none of the other actresses were allowed to know who was coming and who was going. And we had rented this private studio on the West Side Highway in Manhattan. And they had set up a couple of dressing rooms that were separated so that the person who was coming and going wouldn't see the next person who was arriving and going. And they just kept rotating rooms. And the list was incredible. And I remember it was Mariska Hargitay, Monica Bellucci, Penelope Cruz, Charlize, Connie Nielsen, and I'm sure there's a couple more that I'm forgetting but it was just like, that was, and they were coming and they had to do one scene where it was like a night scene on a balcony, and then they had to do one scene where they were in their lingerie leading up to making out, and that was like day one, and we were all just like looking at each other like going, holy shit, this is some big deal. Aren't we lucky? And the movie itself was intense and long, and there were lots of people that were fired, and there was a lot of tension between the DP and the director, Taylor Hackford and Andrei Berkowiak, and Andrei would bring a camera person, operator in, and Taylor would have him fired, and Taylor would bring an operator in, and Andrei would have him fired. And it was just like it was a bloodbath. But somehow a few of us managed to make it all the way through. When they cut a majority of the scenes today, we had a bunch of courtroom scenes in New York, and we ended up flying out to LA to shoot the finale where Keanu, spoiler alert, shoots himself. But there's a transitional scene for Keanu in the movie where he's representing a child molester. And it's the point at which he puts winning the case over,
what's right.
What a morally pure person would do. Right, what's right. And at a point when the young girl is testifying against the guy who molested her, who's sitting, next to Keanu, he looks over, and what they didn't have is a shot of this guy rubbing his crotch, like getting aroused while he was listening to the young girl testify on stage. And so Taylor was like, I need this shot. At this point, we're out in Los Angeles. We've lost the other actor. They had to fly the piece of wardrobe in. What are we going to do? Oh, fuck it. We'll just do it with the crew. Let's see the crew's hands. So we did. Everybody had to go stand and hold their hands up. And he walks through, and he finally gets to me. He goes, you, Joe, you got the hands of a pervert. Get the suit on. Like, okay. So if you watch the movie and you see that cut, that's me rubbing my balls in that scene.
I remember that shot. That's incredible. I want to know, how many years were you on NYPD Blue?
I did the New York portion of NYPD Blue for about four seasons.
Were you on
4 or 5 seasons? I don't remember, Jay. I don't remember. Possibly, very possibly.
That was I
don't know. What year would season 3 be?
Okay, that would have been 93, 92, 94, around there.
I probably started on that around 95, 96, and was on it till, yeah.
We could have met if it had been a little earlier, because I was on NYPD Blue 93 or 94 somewhere.
Cool.
Couple lines.
What was your character, Jay?
I played a a motel, Lower East Side motel guy who has a beard and an Indian accent. And what's happened is some guy has came in and blew my friend away, and his brains are in my beard. He had pieces of brain in my beard. And I'm introduced. It was just sponge. But I was interrogated by the red-haired guy and Nick Turturro.
Caruso,
Yes.
David Caruso.
Nick Turturro. And it was cool. It's fun. It was exciting.
I wonder if Caruso
Sorry, I missed
had
it.
the signature sunglasses on and off move at that point.
It wasn't
Caruso.
It's the other redhead guy in that show. It's like a shorter. I hope it was NYPD.
Oh, like a little stockier guy, right?
It wasn't Caruso.
Yeah.
He didn't have sunglasses. He was. It'd be weird if they put another red-haired guy on there. I wonder if it was even NYPD Blue. Anyway, I still get 18-cent checks for that show. Tim Allen on Richer or Poorer. Can you tell me that story?
Sure. Yeah. For Richer or Poorer was another one of these boondoggly movies where probably the most fun I've ever had outside of Super Troopers on a film, just because it was just a party nonstop. There was no holds barred sort of thing. We were staying in Baltimore. We were shooting in the Maryland horse country. So it was like an hour to set every day. We had built. It's a story about a guy who's running away. He's broken the law as a real estate developer, and he and his wife Kirstie Alley are running away from the law, and they end up in an accident, and they're in Amish country, and then they take on the identities of a couple of Amish people, and they try and hide amongst the community. So we were having lots of there were lots of group parties. There was a bar around the corner that had lesbian karaoke every Tuesday night, which became very popular with the crew. There was another bar that remained open from like midnight till 6 a.m, which is where all the flights that came into Baltimore, all the flight crews hung out. So we got to meet all the people that went flying in there. But every Sunday night, one member of the crew would host a dinner party, and it started small, but by the time we got about halfway through the show, everybody wanted to show up. So every Sunday night went on till like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and we'd have to be down at the van at 6 a.m. So people were gonzo. So it's one of these Monday mornings, everybody's piling into the van and passed out. It just reeks of like beer and gin and weed, and we're all kind of passed out. The guys we're pulling out of Baltimore, and across the radio's on, and it says, actor Tim Allen arrested in Michigan last night for a DWI. And everybody kind of pops up in the van like, oh, we're going back to the hotel? The day's wiped out? We're going to get to sleep? Holy shit. Right? And so next thing you know, whoever in the van, a phone starts ringing. The AD's like, oh, no, okay, we can do this. We can do this. Okay, yeah, keep going. We're going to keep going to set. So everybody's like, fuck it. And passes back out. So we get to set. Tim's not there. We start shooting some scene. We've got a scene with him where he's riding his buggy with Kirstie Alley down a long country road to go meet some other Yoder or Henner Lap or something. We finally get word that he's shown up. Okay, he's in hair and makeup. Okay, he's on his way to set. What we didn't know is that the producers had actually called the local police, so that when he got in the buggy and started chugging down the road, they had set it up so that the local cops were going to pull him over, give him a breathalyzer, and then lock him to the wagon wheel, which is what happened. So now we're going down. He's going down the street. The cameras are rolling. Woo! Police car rolls up. Yeah, Mr. Allen, need to see you for a second. Boom! They get him down. They drew this fake breathalyzer. He's like going, what the fuck? And we're going to need the cuffs come out. They handcuff him to the wagon wheel, and he's like, hey, what's going on? And the producers come out and go like, thanks so much. Thanks so much for fucking up our day. Thanks so much for being here. We really love you. I hope you get over this. And he was losing his mind. It was just a beautiful moment for a guy. He was a ball breaker. So to get him back a little bit was great.
Oh, it's great.
I mean, you're talking about a guy who did prison time, right? I mean,
I
You
know.
might have a fucking gun on him. You never know, right?
Yeah, he was nonplussed at the start, but then he made it. Then it became then he rolled with it. He was a good sport about it.
All right, cool. I mean, we could go on forever, but well, I guess we should probably should we talk about Quasi or Easter Sunday? Or I mean, Joe and I made the last Broken Lizard film, which you worked on with Kevin Heffernan. A lot of it was, I mean, it tried to make it like all the night shoots had to be look like they were lit with fire, right?
Fire, moonlight, or sunshine. Those are our three sources.
Was it a hard movie to light?
Well, it's funny when you're given those restrictions, all of a sudden you're like, okay, this is what I have to work with, and now you kind of know what you have, and you just expand on that. It in a way it makes it simpler. So it's like, okay, how do I just lean into this? So that was it was difficult in terms of the sets with the dungeon, because it was so dark. It was so dark. There weren't really many windows. There weren't many places to push in natural sunlight. So that made that was a little difficult. So was the torture cells, where Lemmy was locked up, and but otherwise, it was fun. It was a fun challenge.
I love the look of that movie. I thought it looked great.
Oh, cool, man! Thanks. It was fun.
How would you describe the differences are between Heffernan and I as directors?
I see career guardrails coming out.
Let's skip it. We'll skip it. I'm with you. You're right. Okay, let's get to the part where we promote something we vouch for. This is for Vouch Vault, the app that I created with these two guys. That's sort of like the Instagram of recommendations. And if you sign up for Vouch Vault, I'll follow you, and you basically just put everything that you love the most in the world, like restaurants, your book you're reading, television show you love, movies, weed strain, whatever. So I'll start us off. I'm going to vouch for this book, Postcards from the Edge. Is that it? Yeah, From the Edge. I remember this book. It was written by Carrie Fisher. It was after she had played Princess Leia, I believe. I mean, she was sort of a famous drug user, addict. And she, the book is about a fictitious actress who goes into rehab and then comes out. And it is so goddamn funny. It is like, she's as if she was a stand-up comic. And then when you read her, she's like so brilliant and so funny and so detailed and such great, weird little non-structure. And you remember now, she was in Blues Brothers and dating John Belushi. And that was the movie where Belushi became a cocaine addict. And you can kind of put it all together. You can put it all together. She's funny. She liked cocaine, all that. And she was a hell of a fucking writer. I mean, just a hell of a writer. Now, I saw the movie, and I vouched for that about a few months ago, and Meryl Streep played her in the movie version of it. The movie is incredible, but this book is just magical. Postcards from the Edge.
What made you pick that one up so many years later?
I'll tell you why I didn't pick it up originally, and it's entirely because the old me was a little more fixated on doing the things that men do. Like I wouldn't wear.
Wait! This is the old you as of a couple months ago.
I got a little bit of that left in me, but obviously,
why did this shift? I didn't get a text or an alert. I didn't know there was a new Jay.
Like I see guys walking around with like light pink shirts on, and I'm like, yeah, it's a straight guy. I mean, I still haven't gotten there yet, right? I mean, when we go to like Nantucket or Cape Cod in the summer, my wife forces me to buy a whole new wardrobe so that I can meld in with these like East Coast cats. Now I went to prep school. I know what they're wearing, but I got a pink and white striped shirt in my closet. I got like green shorts. It's also a costume. I put on this fucking costume and go to Cape Cod.
You've got range.
And I'm like,
got range.
And but I was, I was against the idea. Like I wouldn't go to. Originally, when yoga came out, I'm like, I'm not doing that. And this book fell through that macho crack for me because I was like, Carrie Fisher, Princess Leia. Meanwhile, she's like, I would call her a comic genius of the ages when you read this book.
Yeah. She had like a really long running one woman show that she toured with for years that I saw. It was,
I missed it.
It's great, Jay. I love that you've totally turned the corner now. I didn't know until you talked about postcards.
I'm basically
from the
a
Edge,
woman now. I mean, I'm like, my mind is open.
I will vouch for. We've been talking about a lot of movies. I think people are going to hear about it more now because the award seasons come around. It got nominated, but I watched Anatomy of a Fall, which I didn't know anything about when I first started watching. I didn't know the genre. I didn't know that it was a foreign language film. It's partially in English, but it's 80% in French. And I can't say much about it because I don't want to give anything away. Other than you're on the edge of your seat wondering if what happened, is this woman innocent or guilty, the whole movie. And it's really fun to, like, it's one of those movies you can't have your phone out. You got to pay attention because you're going to miss a piece of information that's subtly being delivered. And the performances were incredible. It's about a guy who falls off a roof. And then it becomes an examination of this marriage and this family. And it was I thought it was awesome.
Cool. I got it downstairs. I'll watch it.
Yeah.
Very cool. I have the screener too.
Yeah.
This week.
Anatomy of a Fall. Who was the actress in it?
I don't know. I'd have to look it up. I think she got nominated for an Academy Award, though, I think. So we'll all know her. She's speaking English. The marital scenes, the best part about the movie is the kitchen sink fight scenes between this couple of a guy that you've known that is fallen or not fallen or whatever happened to him off this roof. And then you get to see through the course of the movie what he was going through prior to the event. And they're great. I love good fight scenes in movies amongst couples. And I put those up there with the best of them. It's good.
I was asking because I was wondering if it was this actress named Isabelle Huppert. Because I heard about I'm sure I have the name wrong, but she was a French actress. She's still working. And apparently when you shoot her single, she's obviously whatever, she's lit and all that stuff. But when you flip around to the other side, she leans way into the frame to try to obscure the other actor's face. And they call it the Huppert. And she's just kind of blocking like this. She's leaning in.
Ouch.
I worked with the crew.
There is a shot like that in the movie where it's on somebody's back. I don't know. I thought it was a choice, but I'll see. And it like she leans like this. Somebody
France,
leans like this
the
into the shot. You see the back of that.
Yeah.
Do they teach it at NYU, Jay?
Okay.
In the half class you went to, did they get the pair?
What do you got, Joe?
Well, I'm going to vouch for a region of Europe. This summer, my wife and I went to Puglia, which is the heel section of Italy, and had an extraordinary time. We were there in July for 2 weeks of July and a week of August. And if you haven't been there, if you're not familiar with it, it's like a completely different world from the rest of Italy. You have the Adriatic Ocean, which is beautiful, clear, blue, and warm. You have these beautiful feudal cities that are small and easy to access and friendly. It's affordable. The food is fantastic. and you have miles and miles and miles of olive tree groves, and these trees are between 800 to 1,200 years old. And you look at these things, and they're like almost like right out of Middle Earth as you drive by them. Had an extraordinary time. We were staying in Ostuni, which is a famed white city. Another city there, Lecce, and another city, Cisternino. Beautiful architecture, beautiful history. Couldn't speak more highly about it. I absolutely loved it, and I would go back there in a heartbeat.
When you got there, did you tell him John Gambino sent you?
I didn't have to. I had a shirt that said, "I'm with Charlie."
Oh, Charlie Gambino. Sorry, Charlie Gambino.
Yeah.
Right. Fuck that joke up. Anyway.
I think that's the first time someone's vouched for a region.
I know.
We haven't had anyone.
Incredible.
That's great.
Charlie Gambino.
I love that.
All right, Joe. That was fantastic. I really appreciate it. We're writing quickly, so we'll go make another movie soon.
Please. This is great. Great to see you both, man.
Yeah.
Hope we get to see each other in person soon. This is a blast. Thank you for having me.
Cool. Thanks.
Great to see you, Joe.
Mustache Tales.